Assalamualaikum and very good morning everyone. Warm greetings from Institute of Bioproduct Development, University Technology Malaysia. It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to today's webinar and especially to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished guest speaker, Professor Yeng Ming from Materials Science and Engineering, Nanyang Technological University, NTU, Singapore. Okay, let me introduce you about Professor Lam. Professor Lam is passionate about materials, research for sustainable future, and has actively promoted and built advanced characterization infrastructure for in-depth understanding of materials. Her research aims to understand and design novel nanostructured functional nanomaterials for application in sustainable energy, sustainable food production, and also environment remediation. She is also a founder for Phytosol Private Limited that is dedicated to deliver solutions to horticulture and agriculture needs. She is the co-chair of the governing board for International Symposium for Polymer Analysis and Characterization, ISPAC USA. She was awarded the inauguration L'Oreal UNESCO for Women in Science National Fellowship and the Nanyang Outstanding Young Alumni Award in 2009. In 2024, she also co-chaired in inaugural global conference for women leaders and emerging research in material science that serves to promote and support young women in science and technology. In 2024 also, she was awarded the Asian US Science Prize for Women in Senior Category First Prize. In 2025, she was named Top 50 Asia Women Tech Leaders 2025 and is the current CARCA Regional Professional Chair 2025-2026. She was awarded American Chemical Society, ACS, Salute to Excellent Award, and she is also the elected academician of Asia Pacific Academy of Materials, APAM, in 2025. So, Professor Lam, how are you?
Very well,
I hope
thank
you are
you.
doing well and everything is going smoothly at NTU. Hi, Prof. Lam.
Yes, everything is well. Can you hear me? Sorry.
So it's really wonderful to see you again, even virtually this time.
Yes, it's
So
my pleasure.
during our recent visit to NTU, we were truly impressed with the microscopy facility and also the research environment in your under your leadership.
Thank you. Thank
Uh,
you very much. It was a pleasure to have hosted your team.
Thank
Yes.
you very much. So we are very much looking forward to building on this connection and exploring brighter collaboration between NTU and UTM. So
Mm.
especially in the area where we share expertise in bioproducts, materials, nanotechnology. So thank you once again, Prof. Lam, for joining us today and for your kind support. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Professor Lam Yeng Ming to deliver her talk. Over to you, Prof. Lam.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Ross. And thank you for the very kind introduction. So perhaps I will start the sharing. I mean, can we bring up the slides? Sorry, I think. Is it possible to see the screen now? Sorry.
Yes, you can see the screen very clearly.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Prof. Ross, once again for the introduction. So it's my pleasure to share with you some of the work that we have been doing on functional material solutions for some environmental challenges. And as Prof. Ross has introduced, I mean, recently we had some interactions with IPD. It was very pleasant, and then we hope also to develop this further. So before that, I will give a short introduction to the School of Materials Science and Engineering in NTU, just very briefly. So we are actually one of the school in Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. So currently we are ranked number 2 in the US ranking and also in the QS ranking for material science in terms of subject ranking. So the school is not very big. Currently what we have is actually about 45 faculty. So out of the 45 faculty, we actually has quite a large number of research staff. This include the PhD research staff and master's research staff. And of course, our student population, the undergraduate population is also fairly big. It's about 633 across the 4 years. And we both publish reasonably well. And also we have a lot of technology translation to the commercial world. So currently we have about 24 active startup that's running from the school by the various PIs. So the area of research that we do a lot are on computational characterization and also some composite materials, energy, nanomaterials, biomaterials, and of course, sustainable materials. So of all these various areas, what I will be covering today is actually sustainable materials and also energy related. So I will just give a little bit of taste for the two different type of research that happens in my group. So all the research are actually affiliated to the various institute. This is the institute that we use or base on to work with other PIs from other disciplines and also other institutions within Singapore and beyond Singapore. So these are the various centers. If you're interested, we can always share a little bit. I can always share a little bit later on. So I also run a facility as what Prof. Ross has introduced. I run a facility called FACS. So FACS is actually an electron microscopy and X-ray facility. So what we do a lot is actually consultation. So users who has actually problem statement in material science that needs some solutions. This is something that we do. We educate. We also do a lot of training and seminar courses and workshops. We also do a lot of collaboration. So this is actually working in partnership with research staff and also other type of industry partners. So the facility actually has many TEMs and many SEMs, and I welcome anyone who is interested in a facility like this to come by for a visit. I think it's actually quite a nice platform for doing some interesting advanced studies. So without much further ado, I will now go on to talk a little bit about the area of research that my team is very much focusing on, which is actually functional material solutions. So what we are very passionate about is actually to use these material solutions as a platform to actually solve some of these environmental challenges. So today's talk, I will cover two areas. One is sustainable polymers. In this case, these polymers are used as a way to improve land productivity. And then I will also share a little bit of work on what we are doing with hybrid perovskites. This is actually devices which is used for harvesting sun energy and convert it to electricity. And how through the use of advanced characterizations, we can understand the materials a little bit better and then to improve the efficiency and stability of these materials. So first, cellulose. This is actually the basis for the natural polymers that we are working with. And this is actually what we use to improve the land productivity. So what is actually the problem? The problem essentially is have something to do with, of course, the food production. So if you look at California, there's actually a heavy dependence on water-intensive farming methods to actually produce food. But unfortunately, in places like California, they also have extended period of drought and water shortages and forest fires. This actually is triggered by climate change, of course. And in China and Mongolia, because of the change in the human activities, generally there's an increase in desertification, deforestation. And this actually makes the land, which is already very vulnerable, even less productive. In Australia, it's actually one of the driest continent, but it requires massive amount of water for farming. But only 6% of the land is arable without any irrigation. Again, this land mass needs to produce food. So all these are challenges that is faced by around the world. So what is the outlook? Essentially, we have lack of water, we have lack of land. Why do I say lack of water, lack of land? So if you think about the amount of land that is available for planting that's arable is actually only 10% of the land mass in the whole of the world, and the water, only 3% of the whole world's supply of water is actually fresh water. Out of that 3%, 70% is already used for agriculture. So we have very little water left. So if you look at the agriculture productivity index, this essentially is talking about the amount of input versus the amount of output. So how much input you put into the farming requirement, and then what's the output from the farming output itself. So if you look at currently where we are standing at this red dot here and the red line. In order to feed our, now we have more than 8 billion people. In order to feed our people by 2050, we need to increase our food production by 70%. This is a huge increase. And as I've said before, the food requirement has to increase by 70%, but our land mass, only 10% of the land currently is arable. And this doesn't take into account the amount of land that's actually degrading right now. So if you think about the water supply, as I said, actually 70% of the fresh water is already used in agriculture. In Singapore, we are even worse off. We have land scarce and water scarce. So if you look at the world population is actually growing, but the land, the blue line here, the land that's actually used for agriculture has flattened since 2000. So there is no increase in land use for agriculture since then, but our population has grown quite substantially. And then if you look at Singapore, we are even worse off. The orange line is actually the agriculture land. We dropped the agriculture land usage, and then the Singapore population, of course, is also growing. So with all these challenges, what can we do? So the problem with water availability to plants essentially is two. So if you think about a very dry land, in a very dry land circumstances, if you have a rain that comes down, let's say the first round of rain or some water supply to the land, because of the hydrophobic land surface, if you have any large amount of water, what will happen is actually the water will not be able to penetrate, and at the same time, if there is a slope, there will be a runoff, which means that the topsoil is actually removed. So this is poor soil permeability. And then if the water has a chance to even get into the soil, it cannot be uptaken by the soil if the soil is sandy, for that matter. So essentially, in some cases, there's actually a very poor moisture retention. So there are two problems here. One is actually water permeation. The other one is actually water retention. So our solution essentially is to actually use a material which is considered as grass material, so which is generally regarded as safe material. There is no reactive cross-linker, no epoxide, no dialdehydes, no organic solvent. So this material that we use, we made by using a platform where we do not use any organic solvent. There is no reactive cross-linker. Is a very clean platform. So the simple production process is actually a fabrication process where we use spray drying to produce the food. In fact, we are now producing it together with IBD, which is actually a very nice platform. And then there is no cleanup requirement. There's very little moisture content. Once you spray, you collect the powder. The powder is what you use. So this powder actually will swell with the presence of water or nutrient solutions. And then it will swell to 200, 300 times, 400, 600 times in its original volume. So it can uptake water. And in any acidic or alkaline condition, the swelling behavior doesn't get affected. It can easily penetrate the topsoil. So it can be delivered together with irrigation, together with fertigation. It can hold more than 69% water capacity now. And then it can also improves the wettability and reduces the runoff. So this is an example of how the performance of these material work. So I will show you, this is a video. So let me first. show you this video. See, this is actually a sloping dry soil. If you just put water on it, the water stays as a blob on the soil. It doesn't penetrate. This is our formulation. This is Retensil G. So as you can see, the Retensil G actually penetrates the soil. This water only remain as a water droplet. Now, if you see the next video, which is even what we are very pleased about, which is actually now if you apply water on the surface which we have put Retensil G previously, and you can see that the water just seep through with no problem. So essentially this formulation changed the condition of the soil. At the same time, because of this gel, it will uptake water, it will stay in the soil for a longer period of time. So the essentially what I'm trying to say is actually with irrigation, the microballs are actually, the microgels in the poles are basically flush, and then the water actually seeps through, and then this gel will swell. This serves as a mini reservoir. So when the plant needs this water, these are available for the plant to uptake. And if you look at this example, this is actually with microgel, with our Retensil G in pure sand. This is actually sand. We try to push it to the extreme condition, which is actually the sand, which is used for your aquarium, which is very, very clean sand. No nutrients, nothing. So with this sand, we can now plant even lettuces. These lettuces will express its stress. So when there's water stress, it will turn purple. So this one is with microgel. This one is without microgel. With microgel, you can see that the leaves remain green, and actually it remains very supple. And then with this, without any microgel, it's just water. Over time, what happens is actually the plant starts to express signs of stress. That's the reason why it turned purple. So this gel, when it's mixed with soil sand, what we have is actually the soil water characteristic curve shows that actually the water uptake is very high compared to without the gel. And then over different cycles, over 30 cycles, we wet the soil, dry the soil, wet the soil, dry the soil. The performance remain up to the original stage, very, very repeatable. So we can trap nutrients. The amount of nutrients that is trapped is actually very substantial depending on what you're looking at, NPK, any of these nutrients. And then if you look at the swelling behavior of this microgel, essentially these are already swollen gel. This is the video, which actually when we flush it with water, you see the gel swelling is very instantaneous, very fast. So essentially, this swelling ratio is actually controlled by the cross-linker that we have. So depending on the percentage of cross-linker, we can control this gel swelling. And this swelling actually doesn't change very much across the different pH that we are working with. And in the presence of salt, again, the size of this gel doesn't change very much. So it doesn't get influenced by salt presence in the soil. It's not affected by the pH level in the soil. So we've tested with plants. So we tried with food plants. These are actually leaves that we commonly see in Malaysia and Singapore. So in day 0, what we do is actually we water it with water, and then we leave it for 5 days without any water. So we water, and then this is actually with Retensil G. So this is the formulation. This is the microgel that we added in. If you look at the Retensil G, after 5 days, most of the seedlings stay alive, but only water will die. So it's actually essentially extend the period where you do not need water. If you go to day 7, it's even more pronounced. Most of the seedlings in the water-only conditions all did not survive, but with Retensil G, you basically see that a lot of them actually survive. In fact, the first one with amaranth, it also survived, but it's just that the color of these leaves is very close to the soil. And if with only water, with only nutrients, without any of the microgel, without any of the Retensil G, this is how the lettuce grew. And with Retensil G, with water only, you see that the plant is already growing very much better than the nutrients given plant pot. And with Retensil G and nutrient, the plants is growing even better. So essentially, this microgel helps with plant growth and extend the life of this plant growth. So we have tested it in small plant pots in small greenhouse. We have also tried in large greenhouse where we do it over COVID because the students and all my staff left it to grow for over a period of time. With Retenso G, it was able to keep the plant survival rate very, very high. We also test it in one of the building site, which is a building block, ready building block, industry building block, where they have greeneries. And with the greeneries, we started off, they actually have to do watering every day, but because of the usage of Retenso G, they now can leave the plant with no watering for 3 days. And then in fact, we were able to stretch it for 5 days. So this actually helps to reduce the amount of water that's required for these plants. So we have also tried it on Changi Airport. On top of Changi Airport, some of the walkways, they have rooftop, which is actually green. In the past, with only water, they were not able to grow green plants. But with Retenso G, after 2 applications, you can see that actually the Retenso G helped to maintain the rooftop to be more green. So water now can actually be held by a shallower amount of soil. So we also work with the Housing Development Board, and then also with some of these international platform where we shared our results. And the last one was actually we tested off one of the floating farm in Malaysia. And what we did was actually together with a urban farmer, we float the urban farm out into the sea with this testing of this Retenso G. It also helped to extend the life of these vegetables and plants in these floating farms. So what happened to the microgel in the soil? I mean, a lot of questions was asked, whether do we know if it's actually degrade? So this is what we did. We follow the soil, the microgel existing in the soil, what happened in the soil. So this is actually fluorescence labeled gel. So in day 0, this is the amount. Day 20, this is still the amount. Day 45, you start to see the reduction in the greenness. This is actually the gel, and then the less of the gel. By day 60 is all degraded. So the beauty of this is actually this microgel is actually consumed by the cellulase that's actually present. The microgel is actually degraded by the enzyme present in the soil. So we will not be worried about what bad things do we leave behind in the soil, because a lot of the synthetic super absorbent polymers, when you apply it into the soil, there is material that's left in the soil, and over the period of time, these material can actually run into our water supply and causes issue with health and with different type of organisms. So how Retenso G or half the microgel actually perform as compared to other type of water retention possibility with peat. Essentially, Retenso G is actually our microgel is actually a very sustainable gel. So it's actually degradable. For peat, is a one-time use. So you use it, and then the peat is no longer. You then have to use new material. So essentially, this also peat is actually a very good carbon sink. But with this usage of plant growth and usage in agriculture, you are releasing this carbon. So it's actually reversing, and it's actually contributing more carbon into the atmosphere. And of course, with zeolite, if you use zeolite as a platform to retain water, what you need to do is you need to keep churning with this kind of together with your soil. You need to mix it in. But for our platform with this microgel, you do not need to do that. So the applications areas, we can see a lot of applications in Middle East where they wanted to do landscaping and also planting on arid land. Some of the testing that's ongoing we have with companies is actually with this kind of application. And then also for US, if Australia and Southeast Asia, if you're thinking about reforestation, or even for palm plantations, and of course high-tech farms. So what we are suggesting is with these nanomaterials or microgel materials, you can actually increase the amount of arable land. Just now I started off discussing that actually there are only 10% of arable land in the whole of the world, but there are actually more than 40% semi-arable land, so semi-arid land. So they are actually dry land. The ability of this dry land to grow a massive amount of vegetables is limited. So with these solutions, it's possible to now expand this arable land. You can improve the plant growth, you can save water, and then you can also improve the crop variety. So if you're interested, you can also do a scan of this QR code. You will be able to see some of the other videos that we have tested on this particular materials. So I will move very quickly to another platform, which we look at functional materials, but this is actually totally a switch of gear. So now we are looking at composite material. These are material, we call it hybrid perovskites, and these materials are excellent for solar cell applications. There are two considerations for all solar cells applications. One is efficiency, the other one is stability. So I'm going to share with you why this material is so attractive. So if you look at hybrid perovskite has actually a structure like this. It's called the ABX3 structures. So with this kind of structures, essentially the A site, the blue blob, is actually the organic ammonium cation. And then the B site is actually either lead or tin. This is commonly found. Lead or tin. This is another, this is the inorganic cation. So it sits in the octahedral. And then these purple blobs are the halides. So we call it hybrid perovskites because it contains the organic part and the inorganic part in both in a single structure. So this material actually has a very nice processability, so it can use a solution process, so it can print, you can actually do all sorts of screen printing, all sorts of solution process. And at the same time, with these materials, even if you do solution process, you will get excellent properties like long carrier diffusion, you have excellent absorption, you have very tunable band gap. So with this, it brings us another advantage, which is actually very good solar light conversion efficiency. So the solar photons conversion to electrons is actually very high. So perovskite, if you look at the comparison to the conventional silicon perovskite, silicon solar cells, it's actually very comparable for the efficiencies. So currently it's running at about 27%, the best efficiency perovskite solar cells. So it's now competing very closely with silicon. But I have to say, silicon has its application area, which is very difficult to replace. But in any case, if you look at the cost of the perovskite, currently per unit cost is actually 16 cents compared to 24 to 46 cents for crystalline silicon. So the cost comparison is also very, very strong. So the problem with this material, I mean, there's a great efficiency, great cost ratio, but the stability is one consideration that most people are concerned about. So in stability consideration, you have to consider two things. One is the extrinsic consideration, which is actually whether if this material is actually affected by things like moisture or oxygen. And intrinsic, which is actually, it is meant to absorb light. So how does light affect the material? And also it's on constant bias. So you actually have the electric bias, which is present. And of course, if this is actually situated in a desert, it's also substantially exposed to heat. So with this kind of intrinsic issue, they also can cause the stability considerations as well, stability problem essentially. So these are the considerations that we always have to think about when we are making use of these materials. So in this talk, what I'm going to share with you is some of the studies that we did in understanding how stability of these materials work, and also how we can improve the efficiency and stability of these materials. So if you look at perovskite degradation under electric bias, so this is actually a luminescent material. So if at fresh material, it will look very luminescent, it's bright green. But over the time, you will see that it loses its luminescence. In fact, it loses 90% of its luminescence by 13 minutes. So this is actually very fast degradation. It's actually not very useful as a material. The reason for this degradation is because of ionic migration, electrochemical reaction, also because of interfacial reaction. So this perovskite material is actually very reactive to any of this electrode material that comes into contact with it. So very fast degradation. So generally, if you want to study this material, so this is now talking about characterization. So generally, if you want to study these materials, most of the time, people will use focused ion beam. So this is actually the way that focused ion beam work. It etches away the material on both sides. And then this is the thin slice of sample that is being picked up eventually to be investigated under the transmission electron microscope. So this thin slice of material is actually has to be less than 100 nanometers in thickness. It's very, very thin. So with this kind of high energy ion beam milling, it can cause a lot of damage to this material. So we need to look at alternative way, because we don't want to impart damage to the material even before we study. So a lot of the time, you do not know what kind of damage you will have imparted to these materials before the studies. So what we want to do is to avoid this totally. So we have now changed the way that we prepare this material. We use patterning to pattern. Is the same as microelectronic platform, where we use patterning to pattern the electrode, and then we deposit the material on top. So this is actually the perovskite. We just spin coat it on top, and then with this material, we can now look at it under SEM, look at it under TEM. We can also do in situ photoluminescence and ex situ chemical measurements. So all these NMR, FTIR, and X-ray photoelectron spectroscopy studies we will conduct on these materials. So first, I will show you what are the in situ SEM pictures that we have seen. So with the platinum electrodes, we can see that with a very small amount of bias, 2.5 volt per micron, we will see that holes are generated after 25 minutes. But when the bias increase to 5 volts per micron, you will see that the holes actually generated at the negative electrode actually happens a lot earlier. So it actually, again, is an indication that it's not stable under high bias. So what actually happened, this is a video that shows over time what happened. These white regions are basically holes. So this is keep repeating, this video keep repeating. So these are holes generated at the negative electrode. You will see that actually if you look at the diffraction pattern, the whole diffraction pattern actually collapses, which means that the lattice structure itself is actually collapsing under bias. This material is actually degrading. And then if you lower the bias, you will see that over time, the stability stays longer. You will see that at 0 minute and over time, the difference is not very much. So the structure also retains. So, but then do we actually know what actually happened in the chemistry? So I will just move through this very fast. I'll give you a summary of this, which is actually even at the smaller bias, we can see that there is actually a generation of actually some volatile chemicals, and these volatile chemicals are actually causing an issue to this material. So the cause of this is because of the cation that we are using. So the way to then deal with this degradation essentially is to actually engineer the A site cation. So to change these A site cations. So what we did was actually we created a platform where it's actually possible to then actually to expand this. So what we did was we wanted to balance efficiency and stability. So we changed the platform in such a way that the chemicals that we added into the solution, we can now deposit both the organic and the inorganic cation together in the solution. So this solution will then be heated up and then convert directly into this low dimensional material. So we have a perovskite, which is actually the base material, and then on top of it we put a low dimensional material. Generally, this low dimensional material can help to protect this three-dimensional material because the low dimensional material actually has a longer organic cation tail. So longer cation tail means that it becomes more hydrophobic. It will defend the base material against any moisture. So we have transformed the half precursor method to a free precursor method, and the way to do this is by using the correct solution, a correct solvent. So with this, what we can do now is we can deposit the material with the various architecture, and the best thing is actually our efficiency. This is actually conversion efficiency can hit very high now, above 20%. So it's actually 23% actually maximum. And then the reason is because our open circuit voltage is very high. So the interface now improves. So I will skip this, but just as a summary of this reason for this enhancement in our efficiency, the reason is because the electrostatic potential is better matching with the new material, where I can now put in different type of organic cation to form this low dimensional material. So the stability over long period of time is very stable. So the efficiency doesn't drop. So this is actually normalized efficiency. So, and then the best efficiency, certified efficiency is above 23%, which we are very happy with. So now we have opened up the cation possibility. We can use all sorts of A-side cation. We can use all sorts of metal cation for this low dimensional material. So this is actually just one taster of one of the materials that we are working with, which is actually hybrid perovskite. So the low dimensional materials is actually as a capping layer. It becomes a very effective strategy for actually preventing the device from degrading. But of course, in order to understand the device material's behavior, we actually need to look at advanced characterization to actually tell us what is important for us to address. So with that, I'm going to maybe acknowledge a few of my collaborators. So of course, the first work is actually done majority by Sherwin and Ling. They are my postdocs who did most of the work relating to the microgel and also a lot of the plant testing as well. And then the device work is done together with these collaborators, and some of them are from the physics department in NTU, and then my PhD student Lan, and also my postdoc Haisia, and of course Marcel, who has been our longest collaboration for the longer time. I will also take this opportunity to thank my funder, which is the EDB-SG, and also A-STAR and the Ministry of Education, and also the National Research Foundation. And with that, I thank you for your attention, and I'm very happy to take any questions now. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.
All right. Thank you, Prof. Lam Ming from MSc NTU. Okay. I'm Farah from IBD. So I will conduct the Q&A sessions for this webinar. Okay. If you have any questions, please ask your questions using our Facebook and YouTube platform. Okay. For the first question from Nur Azlinda Ismail. Dear Prof, any positive or adverse effect of Retensol G on human health when they consume the vegetables?
This is a great question, Nur. I think this is something that we are also very concerned about, because we are eating the plants that we are growing. So essentially, because this is actually, I did not mention this, I should have emphasized this, which is actually the base material that's used for creating the gel, to making the microgel, is actually plant waste. So they are plant waste. So you can imagine that if leaves were to fall onto the ground when they degrade, this is actually the plant waste, which is actually food for the plant growing. So we make use of this plant waste to actually create this microgel. So there is no adverse effect. In fact, what we did was actually we sequenced the plant before we apply and after we apply. And there's no changes to the sequencing, because the microgel essentially is to deliver the water. Eventually, if it degrades, it becomes food for the plant, because they are still carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen, and all these various components.
I see. Okay, thank you, Prof. I just want to ask further on this. If we use this microgel to be applied in our commodity like palm oil, etc., can we do that?
You can actually. So in the palm, if I'm not wrong, in the palm plantation, there is actually a period where they will apply nutrients, fertilizer for the plant to grow. But then there are certain period where it's dry. When it's dry, right, they cannot apply any of these fertilizer. But with this platform, what they can do is actually they can actually apply nutrients over the whole period of time, even during the dry season, because these gel will hold the water and together with the nutrients, and when the plant needs it, they will just release it. So as we show, there is actually a potential for holding nutrients as well.
Okay, thank you, Prof. I hope your invention can improve our food security, especially in Singapore, Malaysia, and Southeast Asia.
Yes, I also hope so. Actually, we are starting. We are in discussion with to start a test in Thailand as well for food crops.
Okay, so we move to another question from Ms. Fitrin Hussein. Hi, Prof. What are the current trends or rules that make companies more interested in using eco-friendly materials?
This is also a very important question as we move through the development of materials. So currently, actually, a lot of the companies are interested in looking for sustainable replacement for these materials. The reason is because there is a lot of tightening, especially in the Europe environment. In European countries, probably faster, which is they impose on what is the materials that we use. So what's the lifetime? What is the sustainability consideration? The other consideration which makes company more interested in these materials is also the carbon tax that is actually in consideration, because a lot of the time materials, when you make materials, if you consider the whole life cycle, there is actually carbon involvement. So there is actually carbon tax because of the materials used, because of the processes. But with this platform, with this particular platform that we are developing, in fact, we are using plants for plants. So we call it green for green. So the carbon neutrality is there, which is an advantage for these kind of applications. So when we consider, when all of us are considering eco-friendly materials, I think the trend is definitely very clear. It's moving towards more sustainable options. And the whether how fast this is moving, it depends a lot on the governmental initiative and also governmental controls or suggestions, or I think a lot of the time is actually moving in that direction, because all of us are concerned because of the land and water security.
Okay, Prof. Okay, from this, you think that how confident is a company to start up like this project? I think that one is quite, expensive if, for the new materials, if the companies want to invest on this. So what's your opinion from your experience?
I think in most materials during the developmental stage, the materials cost is generally high because the quantity is less, and also maybe the scale is smaller. But to be fair to us, I mean, I think both Dr. Farah and the team and ourselves, a lot of the time when we consider how to make materials, we also consider ease of making the materials and how is the lowest cost to make these materials. So the consideration goes the type of materials that we put in, that means the solvent that we use. If it's actually purely water, then that makes things cheaper. I mean, you don't need to use solvent. You also do not destroy the environment. This is one consideration. The method that you produce has to be such that it's scalable. It has to be upscalable. And then the material that we use, the raw material that we use, has to be very abundant. I mean, if you think about battery related issues, a lot of the time is actually some of these materials are more challenging to obtain for some countries. So essentially, those are challenges that we should actually avoid when it comes to food consideration. I mean, if you want to produce food, you have to consider the raw material, the process, and also the final, after the application, what is the outcome to the land. So this is actually very important. I think these are the three considerations that we always have to bear in mind when we design materials.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. Then we can understand that this one is from the beginning, you already think of the resource, the cost and everything. So we do hope that more companies will more invest in this project, like this project.
Yeah, we hope so too. Yeah.
So we have another question from Mir Masudin. From your POV, Prof, is it possible that the Retensol G will replace the hydroponic technology in the future?
Yes, hydroponic technology requires basically a running water in a pipe type of platform. So for this particular case, the gel itself may not be that useful. But what we have is actually we have another substrate, which is again made of the gel, but it's actually strengthened by some inorganic particles, which is the same as what you use in soil, which is actually silica. So for those platform, it's actually a very solid block which can trap water. So those are actually very useful as a substrate for hydroponic. So we have other materials platform that we use for different type of growth. I have to say the microgel platform that I've suggested or I've presented, this material is actually very useful for soil and for more solid platform which we are trying to grow plants of. If you have a sandy soil, you have normal soil, you have I don't know, more rocky type of environment, or the synthetic substrate, these are actually very good for using this type of microgel. So it's different design of the materials for different type of platform. It's totally possible to use a sustainable platform for hydroponic technology or development.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Prof. Hope Ms. Mer can satisfy with the answer. So I think we have more questions. Okay, next. Okay, from Ms. Afif. Hi, Prof. What kind of background or skills should students develop if they want to enter this?
Okay. This, I presume, is a student that's asking this question. Actually, when we look at students, or I am sure Dr. Farah will have the same thought as well, and Prof. Ross will have the same thought. One of the first thing that we have to feel is actually you have to feel very strong about, passionate about doing sustainable the projects or sustainable development. So of course, then the hard skills come in. The hard skills essentially is the people that will be able to design materials, that will be able to synthesize material, that will be able to study materials, are people with materials background, chemistry background, physics background, science, any science background. As long as you are interested, as long as you are very keen in understanding how materials behave and how we can transform materials, I think this is actually good.
All right, thank you. So actually material science is for everybody, okay, as long as we have passion on it. So please proceed.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
I have one question, Prof. Okay, I just thinking about Retinol G. If because you said that we can retain water in future, is there any Retinol or other materials that we can retain moisture in our on our skin?
On the skin, actually. there are gels which is actually meant for delivering water to moisture to the skin. Definitely, it can be. It is already existing because we also work with some of these consumer care company where they are very interested in looking at moisture retention and formulation type of things on skin. So maybe not exactly Retenol G, because Retenol G is a swellable powder. So a gel platform, which is actually already starts a cream platform, I think that would be very useful. I think it's possible to design this if there is a need, if there's an interested students who want to do this.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. Okay, next question from Ms. Norlida. How can young researcher contribute meaningfully to this field even if they are just starting out? I think the question is similar, but if you want to add something more, Prof?
Yes, actually, I just want to say that actually in my lab, we have students from different stages. So we have students who are pre-university. So before they even come into the university, they are very keen to do some work. They come to my lab and they work with my researchers on looking at how these materials perform and how to actually analyze these materials and how to see if there is any way to improve this material. So this is pre-university. And then I also have some which is actually undergraduate who are very interested in doing work in the lab. They again come to my lab and then we work together with my team on these. So there is actually no constraint on which level you are. It's depending on the time that you have for the interning in any of this lab or in doing any of this research. I think the most important thing is if you are keen, you should choose one of the professors that you are working or in the university that can actually work closely together with you. Just go to the lab and willing to work hard. I think this is very important.
Okay. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
Maybe okay. We move to another question. Okay, from Mama Amirul. Good morning, Prof. Are this material expensive or difficult to produce on the large scale? I think you already answered it, but once again, if you have anything to add, please.
Yes, I just want to say very quickly, a lot of these materials are plant waste. So essentially, sometimes, I mean, even if you think about it, like the fruit branches bunches in the palm plantation, all those material actually has a lot of these cellulose. So it's using waste to create these materials. So essentially they are not useful material. Originally, we transform it to useful material. So the materials are not expensive at all. To produce in large scale, as we have said just now, actually we choose a process where you can scale up. This is very important for materials development.
Okay, Prof, how do you do the material discovery? Any potential materials that you can, or any formulations or new materials?
Yes.
How you discover it?
Okay. The discovery process is okay. There are a few things. So the first thing is actually you know what are the constraints. You know what are the things that features you want of the material performance. So you have the applications in mind most of the time. And then in some cases, you will actually have some ideas about what to start off with. So in this case, let's say I want to start off with this microgel development. I want to start with natural polymers. So then I will look at the plant-based natural polymers. I will look at the animal-based natural polymers. And then I will then look at the different materials, how I can then make it into the gel that I want. Actually, although I just say that it's a microgel, it went through a lot of processes in tuning the cross-linking process, the what we use to cross-link, what's the size of this gel, because the gel has to fit into the right pore size in soil. So all these things has to come into mind as well. So you always start with a hunch, and then you go and study. And then we then narrow down the design or even refining the design, and then to the final stage. But in the final stage, we will always love our solutions. But then what we did was we test the solutions. Sometimes we change the solutions because this may not fit what we want to do. So the design process is actually quite a long process, but it's always a fun process, a lot of discovery along the way.
All right, thank you, Prof. You mean that research is actually a journey, not
Yes,
right or wrong?
yes,
So it's
very
very
much so. Yeah,
for,
indeed,
for
indeed.
those who love to exploring,
Mm.
especially in science and technology. Okay,
Indeed.
next question from Ms. Rahima. Hi, Prof. How do scientists test whether a new material is truly green or just sounds good on paper?
Okay, very good question. Yes, a lot of the time when a material is marketed as green, it may not be truly green. I can tell you why. I mean, the base material, the raw material is an easy process. I mean, you can access whether if the material is green or not. If they tell you that this is actually, for that matter, if this is actually collagen, it's green, right? I mean, it's actually a process, a material that can degrade. You know that it will degrade. So, or someone will tell us that actually PLA is green, polylactic acid is green, but it's only green if it's actually degraded in a certain condition. So green or not, the raw material is just one consideration. But the process that you make this material. So let's say if you are using solvent which is not green, if you use processes which require a lot of energy, all these things that comes in will mean that these materials eventually, though green, they market it as green, is not as green as what could be. So the whole analysis of the whole production cycle, so the whole life cycle analysis, how it's used, how it's made, all these things has to be considered in order for it to be green. So now there is also an initiative to trace the origin of materials. So a lot of these companies who are committed to this sustainable values and goals, a lot of the time we have to produce the whole life, how this material is produced to how this material end its life, has to be analyzed before we can actually say that this is green. So unfortunately, it's a very complicated matter, but it's actually very necessary. So the life cycle analysis is very important.
Okay, thank you, Prof. So we need some study because we before we can claim green. Okay.
Yes.
Next question. Okay, hi, Prof. I have a question. Cost-effective approaches for producing sustainable material without compromising performance.
There are cost-effective approaches in producing things. Depending on the materials, definitely depending on the materials. I mean, there is possibility. I believe some materials may be easier than others. So depending on the materials, depending on the platform. So the way to think about cost-effective approaches for producing materials or sustainable materials is actually you always go back to what is existing processes already out there. So in the IBD case, you have like spray drying, you have all sorts of platform where you can actually produce large amount of material. Those are the good consideration to start off with. And then if we think about thin films, then solution processing becomes a lot more cost effective compared to evaporation. You know, you need high energy to evaporate molecules or atoms before it can be deposited. Those requires a lot of energy. Methods may be less cost effective. So it depends on the type of materials and the type of surfaces that we are depositing. We can actually go back to consider these are the potential methods to do so.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Thank you.
Yes.
I think that's okay. Last question. Okay, from Ms. Nur Arbaina. Hi, Prof. Lam. Thank you so much for insightful sharing. Hope you are doing well. My question is, how do researchers ensure that new functional materials for environmental application stay safe and sustainable over time?
This is actually very, very important because actually a lot of the time when we design materials, we also think about how the materials will end up in the environment, how the life end for these materials. So that's one of the reason why a lot of the time when we design materials, we go and look at what is the end of life after degradation, what happened to the materials. So if you can do that, I mean, as a researcher, if you can consider what happened when this material degrade and how long it takes for this material to degrade, you can ensure that these materials can stay safe and sustainable over time. So safe and sustainability consideration is slightly different also. Sustainable, we also need to think about the resources that is used to generate this material. So both the resources that you use to generate material and how this material ends its life is very, very important consideration for what you are interested in. So for this, as a designer, as a materials engineer, as a materials scientist, we actually put this as one of the top priority when we think about functionality design as well.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Prof. Okay, now already 11:24. So one more question here from audience, from Ramajit. Is retinol G susceptible to biodegradation by soil microorganism or consumption by insects within the soil matrix?
Okay, this is a very insightful question because actually when we study this material, when we look at it in soil, there was actually no insects or anything in soil. So the degradation is purely by the enzymes which is present in the soil. So these are enzymatic degradation. So these are helping to degrade this plant waste material. So we also tried putting some of this material into a water where we put zebrafish in it. So essentially, zebrafish is actually very sensitive to the environment. So again, it doesn't cause any issues to the zebrafish even without degradation, is fine. So essentially, what I want to say is actually from the degradation perspective or from the breaking down perspective, is actually done by enzymes. But in the presence of live animals, there's no problem as well.
All right. Thank you, Prof. And thank you for the viewers for all the questions. I hope all what Prof. Lam says or what Prof. Lam explains will satisfy you. Okay. And it's already 11:25, so we have to end here. Right. On behalf of IBD, I would like to say thank you so much to you, Prof. Lam, for your time and for your very insightful sharing that you spent with us this morning. Hope we can meet
Thank you very
again
much.
in
It's my pleasure, actually. Yeah.
in IBD or in NTU in near future for any collaborations between us. Thank you so much once again.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.